Hey everyone, if you don't already know me, I love bread and my favorite seasonal bread thing to make is Cinnabons. Cinnabons are perfect for autumn and they are just so delicious, and I'm going to share my recipe and my method with you here, so stick around if you want to learn how. You don't need anything special. I am using a stand mixer, but it is possible to do this by hand. It just takes a little bit longer and a bit more patience, but a lot of it is done by hand anyway. So give your dry ingredients a little mix and then add to those some hot water. It doesn't need to be scalding hot. You want it to feel hot to your hand, but not scalding. Let the stand mixer or mix these ingredients by hand until you have a rough dough that is fairly smooth and elastic. And you're going to turn it out onto a lightly floured surface and you're going to give it a light knead, and then you're just going to shape it into a ball and you're going to leave it for 10 minutes to rest. Once you return to your dough, it should be a little bit springy, and now we're going to start shaping it into a rectangle using a rolling pin and your hands. Make sure to give yourself more space than I gave myself, and make sure you flour your rolling pin as well. You can shape the corners of the rectangle using your fingers, and then you can continue rolling, and anytime it becomes slightly out of shape, you can just gently tug on the corners and reposition them so that you still have a nice rectangle. The benefit of using plain flour instead of bread flour is that it's not as strong, and so it's less springy and it will be more pliable. Bread flour is stronger, it has more gluten, so it tends to spring back a little bit into position and it can be a little bit harder to work with. So that's why I've chosen plain flour. Once you're satisfied with the shape and the thickness of your dough, and I rolled mine out to somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch, just for reference, then you can begin to put the filling in, and then you can begin the rolling process. The filling is a mixture of vegan melted butter and brown sugar. Try and spread it out as evenly as you can onto your rectangle. I ended up using my fingers because it was just easier than using a spoon, and honestly I probably should have made this slightly more powdery or slightly more liquid. I think this was just a little bit too difficult to work with. But I've adjusted quantities in the recipe below. With damp fingers, lightly press along one edge of the rectangle, the longer edge. This is where you're going to roll the cinnamon buns to. And the moisture from your fingers is going to make sure that the dough sticks to itself when you're finished rolling. So you're ready to begin rolling now. I just stretched out the other long edge ever so slightly with my fingers before I began rolling, just to sort of tuck it over, and then you're going to want to start rolling the dough very carefully, very slowly towards you, trying to make sure that no part of the dough gets too much further ahead than any other part. And just be as careful and as slow as you want with this process. You don't want anything to get stuck and tear or stretch. You just need to be really gentle. Flour your surface again lightly, and you're going to very carefully move the cinnamon roll up onto that floured surface. Make sure that the seam remains facing down, and you can give it just a little gentle shape here. I just gave it a little roll and just sort of pushed the ends in a little bit so that they were squarer. And yes, I gave it a little bit more flour on top. So you're ready to begin cutting the rolls now. You can use a thread, but I did not have any thread, so I chose my sharpest knife. And this is very important so that you don't ruin the shape of your cinnamon buns. I'm left-handed, so I just angled it slightly to make it easier for me. You need to make sure that the knife is doing the work. I'm basically adding no pressure at all to the dough here. I am letting the sharp knife cut through the dough. And I always start in the middle, and then I cut those sections in half again and again. I think I ended up with 8 cinnamon rolls in total. But as I said, it's very important that you don't push. You need to let the sharp knife do the work. Transfer the buns to a lined and greased cake tin or any other oven-proof container that you have. It doesn't have to be a cake tin, and it doesn't have to be round. It can be whatever you have, but make sure that you've greased it really well, and maybe use some parchment paper too. The last thing you want is your cinnamon buns to stick to the pan. Cover them and let them rise for at least half an hour or until they're doubled in size. And here they are after they've had a little bit of time to rise. Full disclosure, I didn't actually bake them right then and there. I put them in the fridge once they got to this point, and I baked them later. And now it's time to bake. And they should be golden brown and looking delicious and smelling amazing when they come out. While they were baking, I made a very simple sugar glaze from icing sugar and plant-based milk, and I just put that all over the top while they were still hot. And this is like the final thing that makes them absolutely delicious. I prefer something lighter, but you can make a really thick icing if you want. You can even go for something like cream cheese, depending on your preferences, but this is how I like to do mine. And there you have it, lovely seasonal cinnamon buns, perfect to have with a cup of tea or coffee on a cozy afternoon or a crisp autumn morning. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did, and I'll be back with more videos really soon.